In this video, I'm going to talk about Spy. Which probably isn't going to come as a surprise, but note that this video is not a Spy Talk video. That series is more aimed to inform and help Spy players on their adventures as the class, which is not what this video is. What this video is an open discussion on a thought that's been brewing in my head for a while now. Spy is the weakest class in TF2. From what I've seen, there are two extreme sides to this argument, those agreeing completely, and those disagreeing and almost feeling insulted by the statement. However, note that I'm saying the weakest class in TF2, not the worst class. That title still belongs to Pyro, and I'm being very picky about my wording here because, despite initial reactions, there is a distinction between the two. And whether you're on my side or not, I'd appreciate healthy discussion rather than unhealthy discussion. I'm pretty sure this is an argument that most people can agree to anyway, but it's worth saying nonetheless. Now, the immediate response I seem to get when I bring this thought up is, but I can top score as Spy and absolutely decimate the enemy team. There's no way he's the weakest. And fair enough, you're a good Spy player. But I would argue that if you're at the skill level where you can top score as Spy, you can also choose literally any other class and do just as good, or more often than not, better than if you were playing Spy. A good Spy will almost certainly lose a 1v1 deathmatch against, for example, a Scout of equal skill. The Scout's damage output and maneuverability far exceed what the Spy can keep up with. Factor in that most of the game's classes also have more health than the Spy, and you end up with a class that's outshined in fighting ability by every other class. Except maybe Medic, but I don't know man, the Ubersaw crits every 2 swings and the needle gun can actually be quite deadly. Tangent aside, this is a 1v1 situation we're talking about here, and Spy is not a frontline class. He requires a lot of skill and game sense to be used effectively, hence why he's always put pretty high up on charts based off of skill ceilings, which is basically a measurement of how good you can get at a class given enough time and practice. For the Spy, that ceiling is pretty damn high, along with most of the other classes, which is why TF2 is so lovable and addicting, but anyway, what I'm trying to say here is Spy is easy-ish to learn and really damn hard to master. Which means it can feel kinda disheartening when you're in the mastering phase of Spy and getting killed by literally every other class as soon as you're found out. Which leads me on to Spy's key strength, not being found out. For 90% of people who play Spy, as soon as you get caught out, you're more often than not as good as dead. Hell, even when you're invisible, you can still be called out by some random bullshit flames that weren't even directed at you. Spy's entire strength lies in him being sneaky and imperceptible to the enemy team, hence the name Spy. So it would make sense that he is much weaker when attempting to take on the enemy mano a mano. However, this also has the unfortunate downside that, unlike the majority of classes, stacking Spies doesn't work. It's basically a meme at this point that if you have a good handful of heavies on the cart, you're pretty much guaranteed a victory. Or if you have some more versatile, higher damage dealing classes on your side, like Demo or Soldier, you've got a pretty good upper hand. This is not applicable to Spy. It's pretty widely known that the fewer Spies you have on your team, the better. I'd say have no more than 2, otherwise you run into the problem that unless these Spies are in the 1% of god tier Spy mains, you have a few players on your team that are basically idle and not as capable of dealing damage or affecting the game. This is why I'd suggest anyone looking to main Spy should also get good at an effective damage dealing class that's reliable in more competitive situations. My personal secondary main is Soldier, just due to his reliability in damage dealing, and the fact that how well you do with him isn't entirely dependent on the enemy team's ability to turn around. The entire playstyle of Spy is very difficult for new or average players, which make up the majority of players, to be effective with. It's better for new players to pick up a simple damage dealer like Heavy or Soldier in order to be more successful, as they have a simpler and easier to learn playstyle. Speaking of playstyles, Spy has none. There is no variation to this class. You be sneaky and stab people and sometimes use a revolver. Honestly, this realization has only come to me recently, but it's true once you start thinking about it. So let's think about it. A playstyle is a variation or a different way to play the class. Take Soldier, for instance. Normally you've got stock Soldier, rocket launcher, shotgun, shovel. Simple, right? Jump around, shoot rockets, get random crits and wipe out entire clumps of people. Then you've also got Airstrike Soldier, Airstrike and Base Jumper. This changes Soldier from a simple frontline damage dealer into an unstoppable force of destruction that pops in and out of the front lines, vomiting a barrage of rockets into the enemy team. You've also got a Soldier playstyle that's even been given its own name by the community, the Trolldier. which consists of using the Rocket Jumper and Market Gardener, completely changing how you play Soldier once again, as you're almost entirely relying on your melee weapon to deal damage. This playstyle is more of a fun meme than an actual effective way of playing, but it's still a different way of playing, and has its own skill ceiling that you can clock hours into getting better at. Some other big examples are Engineer's Gunslinger, which completely revamps Engineer into more of an aggressive frontline class rather than the typical turtling Engineer. You've got the Thermal Thruster for Pyro, making a class that isn't hugely mobile other than flare jumping, into a class that can freaking fly, unlocking tons of new potential for the otherwise stale class. Heavy has the Sandvich, Medic has the Crusader's Crossbow, Scout has the Bonk Atomic Punch, hell even Sniper has the Huntsman, a weapon so different to the usual Sniper playstyle that it's the only primary you can use as Sniper in medieval mode. What does Spy have? The Dead Ringer, I guess. And also maybe the Red Tape Recorder. No, actually never mind, just the Dead Ringer. Spy has a lot of weapons that look like they should change the way you play them, but don't actually change the way you play them. Aside from do less damage but get more cloak, or have less health but be fast when you stab people, there aren't any extreme playstyles that completely change the way you play, unlike my earlier examples like the Trolldier. The reason that Spy isn't considered viable in competitive scenes is that every average and above player is used to Spy's tricks and knows how to effectively counter them. Because Spy only has one trick, be sneaky and backstab people. There isn't a lot that shakes up the class. But that doesn't mean there haven't been attempts. The community has shot many ideas and concepts out there that turn Spy into a much more interesting and varied class. Take this lobster knife suggested by Tufty a couple years back, which can be thrown unlike any other Spy weapon, and means the Spy is capable of dealing a backstab from a distance, with the downside of having a cooldown between being used, meaning no more chain stabs, but opening up the opportunity for a ranged Spy, almost a subclass that can be combined with, say, the Ambassador, to completely rely on dealing effective damage from a distance, which obviously is completely different from the usual Spy playstyle. Or how about the Inside Jab, a fully functional community-made Spy knife that, instead of instantly killing a backstab target, plants a bomb inside them, which can be remote detonated. This weapon is a particularly good example of how to shake up the Spy metagame, because it trades one core element of Spy, getting a backstab, for an entirely new mechanic that opens up new ways of playing. Pair this lack of variety to consolidate different ways of playing, challenging your enemies to get better at countering different playstyles of Spy, with a general weakness damage-wise compared to others, and you get a class that can easily be turned away by many players who aren't committed to clocking in hundreds of hours to get better at a class that is outshined in a lot of ways by a lot of other classes. There are a couple more downsides that Spy has that don't really fit into any of my major arguments, so I'm just going to list them off here. Spawning wall hacks making it clear where an enemy Spy is and what they're disguised as. A series of visual bugs that can give away a disguised Spy. The inconsistency of hit registration making it unclear what is and isn't backstabbable. Being slower when disguised as classes that are below the average walk speed, but not walking faster when disguised as Scout. The knife not being able to random crit, although this one I don't really have a problem with. Unusual effects giving away a disguised or cloaking Spy, having to mainly rely on unsuspecting players in order to perform well, the list goes on. And I know Valve has now turned their attention away from TF2 for the foreseeable future, so it's unlikely any major changes are going to be made to any class, not just the Spy. So I'm probably yelling into a void here, but it's very clear that compared to other classes, Spy just falls short. So now you're probably wondering, so why do you main Spy? And honestly, it's because this never gets old. There is no class like Spy in any first-person shooter, or even in any game, and I think when Valve went about making a class that's based on a 1960s Spy, with his ability to sneak around in moments of high tension, before a sweet payoff of stealthily taking down a target, they hit the nail pretty on the head with Spy. In terms of skill, Spy's high room for error personally makes me feel all the more awesome when I pull off a trick stab, or make a risky move to get a chain stab and it pays off. That level of risk-reward doesn't exist in any other class for me, and I grew my love for TF2 through watching other Spy mains like Mr. Paladin and Stabby do incredibly cool things with the class, and wanted to take on the challenge of getting good at a class that probably takes the most practice to get good at. And god, in my opinion, someone destroying a pub game as Spy looks way cooler than any other class doing the same. So, what to take away from this? Spy isn't the strongest or easiest class to be good at. It can be infuriating when you're in the stage of trying to genuinely improve your play, but I do not want to discourage anyone from trying nonetheless. Spy's skill ceiling can turn off a lot of players from trying to get good at the class when it's much easier to pick up a damage dealer and do more faster that way. And for the players that don't feel like playing Spy for this reason, you probably made a sensible choice. As for me, I think I'll keep playing Spy for a while. Cheerio.
Activate the charm, Doctor!
Extra special thank you to Engineer Gaming for the £10 Patreon. Reminder that if you want to support me in my endeavours, you can head on over to patreon.com/HintShot for cool benefits like getting every video a day early. Also, I have a Discord server which you can join for absolutely free and chat with me and other fans of the channel. Links for both are in the description.